It was a successful test run, but high-altitude storms will postpone the summit attempt for the day. The next morning, the Clouds unload their bounty and the expedition is camp-bound.
So we're here on Kahiltna Glacier, Mount McKinley, close to Mount McKinley in Alaska. We're 7,200 feet altitude. We knew that there was no way in the world we'd be able to come up to this altitude and fly around the summit of Mount McKinley without some means in which to adjust mixture on the carburetors, because at that altitude they just won't run because there's just too much, not enough air. Too much fuel, not enough air. So over the last several years, I designed and built a mixture control assembly, which goes onto a Bing carburetor with a slight modification. The only physical outside thing that you notice on the carburetor is this cable comes up out of this is the throttle cable. This is a mixture control cable. It comes out right next to your throttle ferrule. Comes up, out, and into a convenient place where I can use the knob to turn the needle inside, right here. So I'm able to use the cable to turn the mixture control. What I'm able to do is by pulling the top of the cap of the carburetor off, slide the slide out. So what I have is I have a mid-range needle right here. It's attached to a special brass screw, and that brass screw is attached to that cable, which runs up through this housing here. By turning the knob, I'm able to raise and lower the mixture control needle from full rich, which is where it's at now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 turns to full lean. That's the same extent that you would have if you were using the clip in the stock needle. I've got a 158 main jet, and then you go in just a little deeper. And I've got a 2.72 needle jet. Okay. This needle jet and this main jet have to be set up for your altitude density wherever you happen to live at, your temperature altitude density. So if I was flying at 60 degrees at sea level, I could easily get away with just using stock jets. But at 7,200 feet, at 32 degrees, and sometimes much lower temperature than that, I'm going to have to use my jet correction chart to make sure that these jets are correct. And what that does is that allows this needle jet, this jet needle, to be adjusted so that I can go from full rich to full lean, and I can keep the jet approximately in the middle clip, or 2 to 3 turns out. So now that I've adjusted for my jet correction, or for my altitude density, I'm going to go from a 2.72 and 158, I'm going to go to a 2.70 needle jet. To a 150 main jet. And I have to do this in both cars. By the way, this is not a screen for debris. This is a screen for bubbles only. It has to be in there. Slide it on, put your cap up, snap it into place. Okay, now that I've adjusted for correct altitude density, now I can start the engine. And my goal is to put the needles at full rich, or all the way up, so that I can make the engine 4-cycle. In other words, it's running so rich that it will only fire every other top dead center. so then I can make it 4-cycle. I know it's too rich. I know that it's reasonably right, and it's running too rich. And then as it warms up, and it's running too rich, what I'll do is I'll bring it up to about 4,000 RPM, and I'll lean it until it runs smooth and comes up to power. And that will tell me exactly where it's supposed to be. And then, of course, as I ascend and go to higher and higher altitudes, all I have to do is adjust the needle as necessary, either listening to the engine or looking at the EGT.
At last, with all systems on go, the eager pilots zoom off the glacier into a soft blue sky. To record the adventure, Jacober has mounted a video camera on his ultralight and took along a 35mm as backup. Despite running into early turbulence, Jacober continued to climb its sweeping circles above the Kahiltna Glacier, eventually losing Wallace. Soon, Jacober was hovering over 12,800-foot Mount Crossan, where he found a zone of pure tranquility. Below him, cotton ball clouds clung to the mountaintops. From his vantage point above Crossan, he could see the extended south buttress leading toward the summit of Denali. He steered the ultralight in Denali's direction and began the journey to the summit. As he rose in altitude, Jacober adjusted the fuel-air mixture, and the UFO Antares purred steadily on, closing the distance to Denali and creeping higher and higher. He established himself above a distinct ridge that led to Denali's summit. Jacober glanced at his thermometer and saw that it was 25 below zero. There was a strong 25 to 35 mile per hour wind rolling over the ridge that he knew would provide his craft with a steady lift. Relying on his experience in hang gliding, Jacober surfed his ultralight back and forth across the ridge, and the unfaltering gust elevated him even higher. For another 2 miles, he continued to play the air current that was flowing over the buttress. The final climb, a precipitous 3,000-foot mountain wall, forced him to change his fuel-conserving climbing strategy. Now Jacober had to motor with power and ascend in circles that brought him dangerously close to the mountainside. As he crested the summit ridge, his face shield iced up, and the numbing cold bit into his aching fingers. The true summit was just a little farther northwest, and he began to question whether he should push on. The Antares, however, continued to hum and climb until Jacober found himself above the summit. He made it! He was the first person ever to fly an ultralight over the 20,320-foot summit of Mount Denali. Jacober quickly took a photo of his altimeter and of the summit. He later discovered the 35mm had frozen during the flight, as well as the video camera, losing precious film and video. Jacober turned his craft and began descending on the 8-mile journey back to the Kahiltna Glacier. When he flew to about level with the summit, he reversed the ultralight to face Denali and shot 3 more photos. Having accomplished his goal, Jacober killed the engine on the Antares at 20,000 feet and glided soundlessly for a half hour back to the Kahiltna Glacier and a jubilant ground crew awaiting him.
I know this guy. Him and I are like this.
Yeah.
And he happens to be the first guy to summit Mount McKinley.
In an ultralight.
In an ultralight.
Well, what happened? What happened when he took off? You watched him almost the whole time, didn't you?
Yeah. Well, I tried to anyways. He took off, went over here, circled here, went higher, 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 higher. Went over there. Went up higher. Then we lost him.
Looking pretty cloudy up there.
Yeah.
Dear Mike, I've been meaning to write you all summer long, at least since reading about your spectacular adventure on Mount McKinley. And finally, after a hectic fall hunt, I find the moment. In a world of 5 billion people, and after nearly every spot on Earth has been probed, it is, to me at least, a wonder that anyone today can be the first at anything. But you are living proof. So I send you my congratulations on such a wonderful first. It comes only after years of dedication to a sport that you dearly love. There may be others in the future that will share with you the thrill of Mount McKinley from above in the smallest of our flying machines, but they all will know that Mike Jacobra was there first. Congratulations. Kind regards. Wilson Gay.
Patty, we need to thank you
We love you.
for this wonderful food.
Oh,
You
it's
did a
wonderful.
super double overhead bitchin' great job on fixing this food up.
And
we love it.
yes, we couldn't have survived without it.
It's the best expedition food I've ever had.
Bar none.
Bar